The honey-coloured sands sang across the surface of the desert that early morning hour. It was already hot, despite the lack of sunlight. 3 strangers, clad in ancient Roman armour and intricate gold-coloured masks, teetered under their disorienting thirst. The brutal sunrise was upon them. But the moon be praised, the 3 soldiers had used their supernatural sense of smell to track a large lizard a mile back. They took in as much sustenance as they could from it. Just over the next dune, they spotted a merchant camp not too far away. Though it was still early, the improvised marketplace nestled on one of the major trade routes of the transcontinental Silk Road was already buzzing with life. Sleepy tradesmen and women wearing dusty clothes propped open their fabric entryways and took in the fresh, dry air. One of the wandering figures out in the dunes lifted her heavy, muscular arm and pointed to a large rice-coloured tent with her black-gloved hand. There were gorgeous, handmade silks, fluttering and flapping on poles staked just outside an elaborate embroidered curtain. Their gear rattled against their flailing bodies as they weakly cascaded down the sand toward the oft-trodden gravel paths. They were on a clandestine mission for the Emperor of Rome, but were forced to abandon a clutch of 10 men in a cave not too far away. The men were hungry and vulnerable to exposure to the sun. They most certainly wouldn't make the trip through the arid, bloodless landscape to cross over the eastern border of the empire. They were at the mercy of their stealthy and disciplined leader, a centurion called Kianja. She, her servant and her bannerman would just make it inside the cosy shop before the morning starlight split open on the horizon ahead of them in the east. The main area of the charming, well-kept tent was modest yet luxurious. There was a sweet, delicate fragrance of orange and peach, marbled with the scent of floral, nutty incense. Kianja perused the wares lining the shelves, suspended by ropes from the support poles of the tent. They swayed in the gentle winds blowing through the front curtain. Kianja peered into a tall, reflective glass mirror, not yet willing to remove her mask to examine her own face. It had been months since she'd seen herself in the flesh. She had no reason to. As far as she was concerned, she was just a phantom, a whisper in the desert. She had lived so many lives before, she could always sense when a new dawn was just about to break. Kianja was so lost in thought, she didn't notice her reflection in the mirror watching her, curiously and confused. Continuing to browse, she found a well-made bronze elephant statue struck with silver and jade gemstones. Something like this would surely delight the Emperor. Perhaps gifting it to him would momentarily distract him from his favoured commander's failures. Nearly a year was spent locating and siring new fledglings in the desert, and all it took were a few missteps to threaten all of her progress. If she returned empty-handed, she might as well never return again. Yet another fine dilemma Dominic has thrusted the house of Kianja into.
I'll search for food, Mother.
The young servant vowed through his gilded mask as he stood near the entrance, ready and willing to tear through the market for anything he could find. Kianja nodded in approval, and he immediately took his leave. Her gloved hand petted the various animal-shaped vases, splashed her hand in the tinkling water bowls, shook and jiggled the ceramic trinkets and charms. Her eyes landed on a familiar-looking horse-shaped oil lamp.
Nice to meet you,
Kianja says to the lamp with a smile, before turning to her second-in-command in the corner.
Anyone you know, Dominic?
The man scoffs as he lifts off his golden mask from his face, revealing a youthful yet battle-worn face. His bright green eyes were invasively curtained with thick, sweaty, straight dark hair. He glares back at the mask in his hands and tosses it onto the hard dirt floor below. Kianja, though disappointed, was not surprised by his disrespect for his imperial equipment. They were all tired, discouraged, and famished. She shook her head and picked up his mask. She attached it to her belt for safekeeping.
I'm sorry this latest scheme of yours hasn't quite worked out for you. Oh, great one.
We just have to counter our misfortune, that's all. Take hold of the situation. Wait, is that the rise already?
What felt like the mid-afternoon sun was flooding the area they were standing in from a closed-off portion of the tent. Ornate rugs and thin white sheets obscured an eerie, glowing green light, like that of a cosmic lantern, pulsing slightly like a quickening heartbeat. Shadows stretched across the dirt floor.
Stay here.
Kianja commanded her bannerman.
Fine. Call out if you need me, mistress.
She stepped slowly toward the back of the tent, her heavy boots imprinting in the infertile soil below her. A bubbling iron kettle began gurgling from behind the sheet, and the pungent smell of green tea and dried herbs hit the ever-evolving senses of the centurion as she moved closer. Kianja's eyes squinted in the bright, hypnotic, swaying green light. The silhouette of a petite figure finally came into focus, and the points of light created the visage of a glowing jade dragon. The dragon's eyes suddenly snapped forward, as if it could see Kianja through the fabric.
Hello? Is someone there?
Hello, stranger. You're out late this morning. It's nearly sunrise.
Teacups rattled as the soft, fluttering voice of a young woman wafted in from just beyond the sheer curtain.
We're, looking for food. Are you the proprietor here?
And what are you hungry for, Legionnaire?
The voice called out. Kianja didn't have to recognize the voice. Her instincts knew she was in the crosshairs of a power she should not trifle with.
My apologies, Mea Domina. We'll take our leave.
Tell me, how did you like them? The wares in the shop. Particularly the glass mirror. It's something special I've been working on.
Kianja found her voice soothing and inviting, and the tea was somehow tempting, despite losing her taste for food centuries ago. She could hear the woman in hiding scribbling onto a small scrolled ledger, and she could see the rate of the pulsing jade lights begin to slow. It was now a dim, sustaining luminance.
Please come, enter. Have morning tea with me. Beloved daughter, is it?
Kianja may have been walking right into a trap. How did she know the meaning of her name? This could go many ways, none of them ideal for a starving trio of bloodthirsty Roman warriors.
Don't worry, I don't bite. I implore you to resist as well. Please sit. Good company has been scarce.
Kianja was desperate to feed, but she was also just as desperate for companionship. Her second officer's mask clanked against her thigh, giving her an idea.
I will enter, but would you mind wearing a mask? I've got one here. It's just...
Gladly. Please, hand it to me through the curtain.
Kianja untied the mask from her hip and slid it through the curtain. Clenching her eyes shut tight, an entity from somewhere beyond the barrier gently lifted the heavy mask out of her hand, and the rustling and clacking of jewel-decorated hair resounded.
I'm ready. How do I look?
The stranger said. Kianja braced herself for what might be a trick. She looked back at Dominic, who was oblivious and peeking out the front curtain. He craned his neck, no doubt in search of their servant Akeem, who would soon be bearing food. She turned back towards the curtain and gently pulled it open, surprised to see a small young woman wearing a beautiful slate-grey hanfu and perfectly moulded night-black hair sitting at a small tea table on the floor. The golden mask gave her the familiar look of a countryman, yet the sinister look of a stoic prowler. The little woman extends her soft porcelain white hand next to her. A duck feather-filled pillow had already been prepared. Kianja knelt down carefully onto the pillow, her powerful muscles refusing to relax in the woman's presence. At any moment, her gentle host could lift the mask and burn her face to the bone. As Kianja contemplates forfeiting her safety over courtesy, the small woman rolled up her fabric scroll and collected her hands in her lap. She bowed deeply, and in lieu of a smile that could not be seen, she lifted her hand gracefully up to her heart. Kianja lifted her own mask from her face, hopeful to generate a friendly pact between the two of them. The little woman examined Kianja's face for a while. She tilted her head from side to side. Her umber-brown eyes, obscured by the mask, sank into Kianja's. The demure hostess then poured another cup of tea and placed it in front of her guest. The soldier quickly nodded her head in gratitude and lifted the cup up with her hands, not sure how to explain away the dishonour of not drinking from it.
I'll understand if it grows cold. I am Mengyao. This is my shop.
Meng Yao. What an interesting name. It's lovely here. Such beautiful things you're selling.
But you haven't come all the way here looking for a bronze fertility statue for your sister's wedding, have you?
Well, we both know what we are.
I'm certain I have no idea what you mean.
Meng Yao lifted her teacup to her mouth, and it clattered against the mouthpiece. They both shuddered in a shared giggle, which devolved into deranged hysterics.
Kianja.
The centurion said, gently pounding her chest with her closed fist.
We're, sent this way on business from Rome.
Just business? No pleasure?
Meng Yao inquired.
At the moment, it's desperation to return home. We heard rumors of people living in the desert that were like us. We had the novel idea they would join our ranks, enjoy the, spoils of war. But now it would seem we're, well, lost. As always.
The fabled bloodsuckers of the eastern deserts, was it? You know, I've never met a vampire before. When you first arrived, I couldn't believe it. My skin had never glowed so brightly. Though I imagine you've met a sorceress or two in all your time here on Earth?
Well, if a sorceress is what you are, I've never met one quite like you.
Oh? And what should I take that to mean?
Well, you're quite hospitable. Western witches aren't as inviting or as green. They're usually gold or maybe blue.
Oh, I see. Well, I'm sure they're missing out on such exciting company such as yourself. As for the glow, I believe it all has to do with diet. We are what we eat.
Ah, is that right? Well, what shall I eat for a glow like yours?
Less people, I would imagine.
Dominic unexpectedly ripped down the sheet from the ceiling, exposing their quiet tea time.
Wait, is that my mask?
The lanky, aggressive man steps over the small tea table and reached for the golden mask strapped securely to Meng Yao's face.
You should never wear a bannerman's armour, stranger.
Dominic, no, wait, don't touch her.
Kianja commanded. But her orders, as always, remained unfollowed. Kianja pulled her burgundy cape over the front of her body and face, while Dominic learned yet another lesson the hard way. He had only pulled the mask away for a moment, but it was all it took to immediately broil his face and hand, as if he had touched the very sun itself. He released the mask and cowered away to catch his breath. Meng Yao giggled to herself as she readjusted the mask, making sure no light bled through. She seemed impressed by her own power.
I'm so sorry, Mea Domina. Don't worry, his, feelings are more hurt than anything. As you can see, he's very sensitive to certain people.
Yes, and now I'll be sensitive for weeks.
Our hostess is Meng Yao, and she is a sorceress from the east.
Yes, I agree.
And she has offered us tea and shade while we regroup.
Meng Yao nods and bows deeply. Dominic remains suspicious.
I don't like this, mistress. I don't like her.
Meng Yao's newly acquired face mask afforded her the mystique she needed to penetrate their thoughts. Though she had the ability to see into their souls, their outward energy told the story well enough.
We cannot travel now, Dom. We will wait.
But can the fledglings wait? I don't want to be held responsible for returning with satchels full of rotting bones.
Dominic's face was still smoking from the burns as he seethed.
It was your idea to overstock and undersell, Dominic. I command this unit and will take the blame. Note that fact in your little report for the Emperor if you wish.
Oh.
Meng Yao pours a cup of tea for Dominic as they settle the matter.
Thank you, miss, but we don't drink... tea.
The mysterious woman nods in understanding, and this validation somehow calms Dominic.
Why are you so happy to see us anyways, stranger? Do we not make you uneasy?
Well, where I am from, we follow the teachings of Master Kong, which requires that I take pleasure in serving my guests, no matter how unexpected they are. Will the third be joining?
Yes, soon, I'm sure.
Amir's tent isn't too far from here. I'm sure it won't be long now.
The little woman suggests. Dominic raised his eyebrows in Kianja's direction. He initiated a bit of intrusive small talk.
And where is it that you're from, Meng Yao? Are you here alone? Isn't it dangerous for someone like you?
There have been many shadows cast upon these tents, yes. I'm from a beautiful oasis in a sea of sand. We do not have vampires where I'm from, but we have met a few traveling werewolf packs. They're quite sweet once you get to know them.
Sweet, she said. Did you hear her?
Yes, I heard her. I have known many changelings. They have proven quite useful.
Except for Aurora. She's the devil in the flesh, in flea-bitten fur more like. Have you got any potions against an immortal lioness?
Please excuse him. He's quite hungry.
I see. You both seem young to hold your stations. Aren't there age requirements?
Well, they've made exceptions for us. You see, we've put in the time and the sacrifices.
Yes, I'm sure you know all about sacrificing, don't you?
Dom,
You're both quite older than you appear, aren't you?
I've seen many moons in my time.
I see. In my village, we're told if we seek immortality, to climb to the very top of a great sparkling mountain. But you must be pure of heart to be honored with such a gift. And the moon? I have my own suspicions about the power of the moon.
Tread carefully, sorcerer. We have a high priestess of the moon in our midst.
Former high priestess. Please, Meng Yao, indulge us with your thoughts.
Kianja settled into her seat and swirled the teacup in front of her. She noticed there were loose leaves collecting at the bottom. It felt like decades since she last had such an easygoing, yet stirring conversation with another moonchild like her. The sudden lack of gore in her life was almost worth the blood famine for her.
I believe the moon is a smaller sister of the sun. They trade each other's light when they need to. That's why you grow weary under it when it's fully illuminated. And the werewolves, they change in their own time every month, despite the moon. Just as a woman does. It just so happens the moon is full when the change occurs. A strange man that comes to visit me tells me that your ruler is a werewolf. Is this true?
Dominic gossips.
Well, the Emperor certainly would love the publicity, wouldn't he? The Romans just love those stinking wolves.
These are all interesting theories.
Kianja humours.
Perhaps we should consult witches more often.
Well, I, for one, prefer not to hang around a walking sun. No offence to you, dear girl.
Dominic, please show some sort of restraint. Apologies, Mea Domina. He's been troubled by sorcerers in the past. A keeper, one who looks after cursed objects. Kept him in a treasury for decades, bound by his magic. He's only recently mastered his, new faculties.
An entire room of magical objects. How fascinating. Perhaps I might become a keeper someday.
And I was just warming up to you, Meng Yao.
I think she's warmed you well enough, my child.
Mistress, please, it hurts to laugh.
Ooh. Well, for that alone, I am truly sorry. I wish nothing but blood and darkness for you, Dominic Xiansheng.
The pangs of fear and hunger in Kianja's stomach were squelched by the grace and ethereality of this mysterious stranger who has inexplicably opened her dwelling to a league of blood drinkers. And unfortunately, Kianja swiftly repelled back down into her cold, dark habits. The game was afoot.
Why would a sorcerer want to keep a vampire?
I wasn't a vampire when Kianja and I met. I was actually a great djinn of the desert. He trapped me, and I shapeshifted into an oil lamp, thinking he would just look over me. But he could spot the soul hiding inside somehow. He tossed me into a room with other unassuming items, and there we all sat, waiting for oblivion. Then her den of thieves rescued me during one of their nightly raids, and I vowed to serve her for eternity, assuming the body of the man you see before you.
I sure know how to pick them, don't I, brother?
Akeem's beaming face brightened up the fragrant tea ceremony as he approached from the entrance, lifting his stifling, sweaty mask. He sat down at the tea table, which was now full of children of the moon. Kianja introduced him to their host, who poured the final cup.
This is our servant, Akeem. Akeem, this is Meng Yao. She is a sorceress from the east.
Akeem's energy suddenly changed, but he remained polite. One of his more miraculous qualities given their various trades of business. While he removed his thick black gloves, he concludes,
That explains the mask, doesn't it?
Meng Yao nodded. Now that they were all there, she instructed Qianja to spill out her teacup to her right and place it back on the table. Qianja was perplexed, but did as she was told. The witch slowly and carefully lifted the cup from the table to express no bad intention and pulled it into her lap. She then held it up in the streaks of soft light, beaming through the tent above them, examining the tea leaves left behind in Qianja's cup. Though her guests couldn't see it under the mask, she was smiling wide from relief and excitement for the vampire.
Oh, Qianja, how romantic, how lovely. The love of your life will be waiting for you in Rome, not long after you've returned,
she told the honourable guest. Akeem scoffed, embarrassed as a son might be, while Dominic pumped his eyebrows up and down and to and fro with a malicious, mocking smile, despite the blistering pain.
No, I don't do love anymore,
Qianja ensured respectfully.
Oh, but you won't be able to stop it. You can't fight this love, Qianja. This love will be your last love.
There was an air of foreboding to the beguiling fortune.
Goodness. It isn't me, is it?
Dominic exclaimed, fanning himself. They all chuckled together.
What about me? What do you see, Meng Yao?
Akeem said, smiling brightly, excitedly splashing his tea and offering his cup to the sorceress. She gleefully grasped the cup, spotting a deep scar down the middle of his right palm. It gave her pause, though she didn't know what to make of it. She tilted and swished the cup carefully in her hands. Then suddenly she stopped. She bent in deeper to make absolutely sure she was seeing what she thought she was seeing. Her guests couldn't see it, but under her mask, she was horror-struck. Her heart thumped in her chest. She thought for sure they could hear it pulsing from where they each sat. Suddenly, Meng Yao threw the teacup down into the sand and kicked dirt over it with what seemed like fear or anger. Silence followed. Akeem shifted uncomfortably on his pillow.
Well, what is it then, sorceress?
Dominic pressured.
What's wrong?
Qianja rushed. Finally, she replied.
There are heroes among us today. Akeem, I saw you as a brave warrior, fighting for what's right, and you'll be victorious. Never forget what you're fighting for.
She bows deeply in respect to the vampire. Akeem nods back in vague understanding.
And what does all that mean, witch?
Dominic urges impatiently.
It was Akeem's reading. He'll know when the time comes. I must say, vampire fortunes are very different from mortal fortunes. They're much more vivid and dark.
You see, Qianja? This is the chaos and hijinks that I don't like about her kind. You can't trust them.
Oh, Dominic, it's just harmless fun.
Harmless? There's nothing harmless about what she's doing. She may have you fooled, Qianja, but I see it clear as day. She's using the same tactics we do on our own prey.
Dominic, that's enough.
And what if I bleed her right now? Is that what you'll read in my tea leaves, witch? Us taking this whole bloody camp? Does anyone even know you're here? Mistress, we should do what we must, as always.
Mother said stop, Jin.
Akeem echoed his master. All the while, Meng Yao had slowly unsheathed a thin, twinkling talisman hairpin from betwixt the buns of the long black locks rolled up on top of her head. The tip of the hairpin doubled as a small dagger, which she elegantly lifted up for the table to see. She raised a finger to pause the escalation.
It's true. You could take every other life here, but I am curious. Could you so confidently take mine?
She then turned the sharp, pointed tip up to the side of her own neck, plunging just deep enough to draw a few precious drops of warm crimson blood onto the iron dagger. She then slowly and deliberately swung the weapon over Dominic's cup of cold tea. 3 drips created raucous ripples in the dark herby water. She wiped the blade clean and resheathed the jade-encrusted heirloom back in her hair.
Please, enjoy the first taste. Then take your fill if you find it delights you. I won't stop you.
Dominic watched as the blood curled slowly from the surface to the bottom of the cup and gulped. He felt he was near death from thirst, yet he refused himself so furiously. He peeked up at his fellow legionnaires, who were just as unsure. None of them had ever tasted the blood of a witch before, but they each knew it might pose a risk for unsavoury, lingering side effects. He was already so parched and resented the woman for adding yet more insult to injury. Dominic swipes the teacup away from the table in frustration.
You've made your point, witch.
Embarrassment now dominated the pain from her bright, searing witch marks. Kianja breathed a sigh of relief. She may have almost been rid of Dominic, one of the greatest torments of her eternity, but may have also almost lost their last hope of atonement in Rome.
So, what kind of witch are you?
Hakim asks, genuinely curious. The entire table invests in the new topic.
When did you know you could tell the future?
I had my awakening when I was 14, only 6 years ago. Some witches can tell the future. Some witches favor mixing potions and poisons. Some like to creep inside your head and plant seeds of doubt. Others can even talk to the dead in their own way.
And you?
Dominic asked dismissively.
I know things. I may not know the tale, but I'll know if one is lying when they tell it.
Kianja's eyes had grown weary of the brightening morning light, seeping in through the corners of Meng Yao's tent. She cupped her hands over her face, as the mask wouldn't be enough to shield them. Meng Yao had already taken notice.
Kianja, I have something for you. Wait here.
The little shop owner rises to her feet and flutters through her wares, hastily shuffling items around. Meanwhile, Kianja drew in her soldiers to confer over the tea table.
We're bringing her with us. She will have to do. Perhaps her tricks and charms will be a good enough distraction for the Emperor. Maybe he'll forgive our failure.
Mistress, what about the men waiting for food?
We cannot save them. They're likely already dead, if we've only just made it here alive ourselves.
She won't be your familiar, Kianja. You know you won't be able to control her. How can we trust her?
And I could only steal 3 chickens to take back with us. We'll be too weak if she turns on us.
Yes, and also, let us not forget. I hate her.
We know.
Ah, here they are.
Meng Yao returned to Kianja, offering her something green and metallic in her outstretched hands. Kianja lifted a pair of folded jade crystal-lensed spectacles up and held them in front of her.
What is it?
They go on your face. They protect your eyes during the day or whenever there's too much sunlight.
Meng Yao gently assisted Kianja by propping up the round handcrafted sunglasses in front of her eyes.
Very clever of you.
Their host added sweetly as she peered into Kianja's hungry, reflective eyes.
Laying silver in your eyes to catch the light at night. Very clever indeed.
How is it, Mother? Does it work?
Hakim asked, trying not to laugh at the spectacle of the spectacles. Kianja's eyes widened suddenly behind the green tint. She could see without pain. She tossed her head around wildly to test their grip on her face. Finally, she announced,
They're genius. Where did you get these?
A few men traveled through here not too long ago. They could control metal. They could conjure without magic. They were very wise, but very dangerous. They were looking for some kind of elixir that was unknown to me. They traded these for, well, something they valued much more than I did at the time. I may have made a terrible mistake in dealing with them. I fear they'll return soon, for the rest.
Her voice quivered under the mask. This was the moment. Kianja had her in striking distance. She handed Hakim the sunglasses and wrapped her hands around Meng Yao's little hands. The old vampire peered existentially into the witch's eyes, communicating all of her hopes and fears in an unblinking, bottomless stare. The old vampire looked so beaten, despite her rosy, unblemished complexion. Her eyes looked as if they could be ready to shut forever at any moment. If Kianja's ancient body could summon tears, they would be streaking down her face. She meant every word as she kneeled before the sorceress, practically begging her.
Accompany us. We will protect you. Please come with me. I will change your life.
Meng Yao reclaimed her hand back from Qianja's firm grip and used it to brush the wet wisps away from the pleading vampire's hairline.
I know, and I will change yours.
Meng Yao raised her hand in a bid for trust from the apex predator before her. She slowly grasped the edge of the golden mask on her face and pulled it away. Akeem and Dominic scrambled to their feet to defend their leader. But Qianja fearlessly stopped them in their tracks with a raised, powerful, clenched fist. Meng Yao continued to reveal her haunting, perfect face, now somehow free of any green burning light. The vampires were both in awe and dread.
Our glow indicates fear or anger or hate or uncertainty. But for as long as I trust you, and you trust me, we shall not leave a mark upon each other. Do you accept these terms?
Mistress, please, think on this.
Qianja fumbled over her words.
Yes, agreed.
What a wonderful encounter this has been, one I could not have foreseen. I have much to do, and very little time to do it in.
Meng Yao ushered her guests politely to the entrance, making sure to help strap Dominic's mask back to his face. Akeem carefully slipped on the jade shades over his mask, excited to try them out in the field.
I'll meet you at sundown tonight at your cave in the desert. Don't worry, I'll find you. I just hope we're not too late for the others.
She turned to the servant, Akeem.
Akeem, please return the chickens you stole to Amir. He has young children to feed. Please, take my extra horse with you for feeding. We'll find our way to Rome soon enough.
As one final parting gift, she offered them large black silk fabric umbrellas to carry over them while they travelled. Qianja led them back towards the singing dunes, from whence they came only hours ago. Their broad, opulent, cooling umbrellas tottered back and forth, protecting them from the late afternoon sun. Meng Yao's strong Auburn stallion trotted along with them.
Well, this is different. Pleasant, but very different.
Akeem said, bewildered.
I will admit, the longer I'm alive, the stranger life gets.